So first and foremost, I want to get into this discussion about Turkey and Sweden. Now, I don't know if you heard, but Turkey recently announced that they are backing Sweden's decision to join NATO. Now, some of you may wonder, why would Turkey really want to support Sweden here? What is this really all about? And you also have to keep in mind that we have seen a lot of changes happen in reference to foreign policy since this war with Russia and Ukraine. Not just BRICS expanding, not just them talking about their own currency, but other countries deciding whether or not they want to make moves as well. And Turkey is not alone. So let's get into this first clip here. Turkey agrees to support Sweden to join NATO. And this is NBC News.
There's also breaking news overseas tonight. Amid the war in Ukraine, NATO is set to expand. Sweden now one step closer to joining. It comes as President Biden joins other leaders tomorrow at a NATO summit in Lithuania. Peter Alexander is there tonight for us. And Peter, a lot of news breaking there.
Yeah, Tom, that's right. President Biden tonight is applauding Turkey after that surprise announcement that it is dropping its opposition to Sweden's bid to join NATO, a move that NATO Secretary General tonight is calling a historic step.
Tonight, a stunning reversal ahead of Tuesday's NATO summit. Turkey agreeing to support Sweden's bid to join the NATO military alliance after a year of opposition. Turkish President Erdogan making the decision after talks with the NATO Secretary General.
Let's pause here for just a second. So notice that they said that Turkey actually had a year of opposition in reference to Sweden joining NATO. So in the beginning, they were not on board with this. So what could have changed? You know, Joe Biden just recently made a trip to Lithuania. Could it be partially because of Joe Biden? Or is there something else that Turkey wants in exchange? And I think you'll have to stay tuned for that.
President Biden also speaking with Erdogan, agreeing to meet in person tomorrow. After beginning his day in the United Kingdom, President Biden today enjoyed his first visit with King Charles. The two at Windsor Castle appearing relaxed, laughing and smiling together. The king seemingly unfazed as the president broke royal protocol, placing his hand on the king's back, before discussing climate initiatives, a personal passion for the king. It followed President Biden's face-to-face with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of this week's NATO summit in Lithuania. The president landing there tonight, just a few hundred miles from the fighting in Ukraine. With last month's rebellion exposing new cracks in Vladimir Putin's leadership, President Biden will look to fortify NATO, even as he dismissed Ukraine's push to join the alliance, raising concerns about how that would impact the joint defense agreement.
So let's just keep in mind here that, yes, NATO is expanding. I mean, we heard a story, it was a couple months ago, that Finland wanted to join NATO. For the most part, they're pretty neutral and try to stay out of these types of conflicts. But things are changing. And I really do believe that the U.S. government has pressured some of these countries to join NATO for it to expand. Also, this is another way to try to alienate Russia. But remember, Russia still does have BRICS, and they have a very powerful neighbor that is a part of BRICS with them, and that is China. So it seems like to me they're trying to get more countries to join NATO, to expand NATO more in an effort to continue to push back against Russia. But also, we need to talk about this idea of the NATO expansion. Now, when Cornel West was on here, I asked him if he thinks that NATO should be dismantled. He said, absolutely. There are other ways to go about foreign policy. There are other ways to go about making sure that countries get what they need instead of expanding NATO. And I think at this point in time, NATO should be done with. But no, that's not what the U.S. government wants, because the U.S. government wants to continue to support the military industrial complex because there is money there. That is also the reason why we have this issue with Russia and Ukraine. Again, they're going to try to prolong this war as much as they can. They'll continue to give billions of dollars to Ukraine in an effort to push back against Russia and try to implement regime change against Vladimir Putin.
It's a commitment that we've all made no matter what. If the war is going on, then we're all in the war. You know, we're at war with Russia, if that were the case.
Late tonight, a White House official telling NBC News President Biden's expected to meet with President Zelensky tomorrow here in Lithuania.
How many times is he going to meet with him? He just met with him recently. Like, how many times is he going to meet with him? He can meet with Zelensky over and over and over again, but he still hasn't made a visit to visit people in East Palestine, Ohio. He can't meet with people who are getting sick from breathing the air right here in the United States, but he can travel across seas to go meet with Zelensky multiple times. This is neglect. This is neglect against the American people. When you have people that are having illnesses, people that really need health care right now, people whose air has been contaminated, they can't drink the water, people are struggling to breathe, people are coughing up blood. Like, these are just some of the symptoms that have come out in reference to people in East Palestine, Ohio. Joe Biden doesn't want to see them at all because that is a Trump district, right? So they heavily supported Donald Trump. So he feels like they don't matter. But he can go across the ocean and visit Zelensky as many times as possible.
Traveling with the president, Peter Alexander, NBC News, Vilnius, Lithuania.
So now I told you, what does Turkey want in exchange? Is there something that they could be asking for as well? And yes, there is. Turkey actually wants to join the EU. Yes, you heard that right. I kid you not. Some of you may wonder, but why? That is what they're really gaming for here. Turkey wants to be a part of the EU. Let's get into this clip. Things are really changing, guys.
Ali, I want to start with you. Some big news. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Kristen, just minutes ago, we heard from the NATO Secretary General, who announced that an agreement had been made after we saw these conditions set by Turkish President Erdogan, saying essentially that if NATO wanted his support for Sweden's membership, Turkey would have to be accepted into the European Union, something.
What did I tell you? Miguel says Turkey wants it all. Turkey wants no more Thanksgiving. I hear you. So you hear that, right? Because people just don't make these type of arrangements. They've been opposing this for over a year, and now all of a sudden they're okay with it. You're not going to make that type of arrangement unless you're getting something in return. Why would Turkey want to join the EU? Could it have something to do with their economy? Could it have something to do with the fact that maybe they feel that there's strength in numbers? Maybe.
That has been opposed for decades now. And that really was thought to throw a wrench in what was supposed to be many discussions at this summit in Lithuania to really rally for Sweden's membership. Remember, it was supposed to happen weeks ago with Finland, and because of opposition from Turkey and Hungary, that was postponed. We have a new statement from the president reacting to this big decision. Just a few minutes ago, he says in part, quote, "I welcome the statement issued by Turkey, Sweden, and the NATO Secretary General this evening, including the commitment by President Erdogan." And he adds, "I stand ready to work with President Erdogan in Turkey on enhancing defense and deterrence in the Euro-Atlantic area." It's unclear, Kristen, whether Erdogan was able to negotiate that EU agreement, because before this, we had heard from the Secretary General saying that NATO and EU are two separate entities. They shouldn't be linked at all. These conditions have nothing to do with each other.
So you heard that part. These conditions have nothing to do with each other, and they should not be linked at all. So why is this happening here, folks? Why is this happening? Let's go on.
Essentially, so until we find that out, really the details of this agreement, so far it seems like this was a very positive progression, a very positive advancement, and it seems like this deal to get Sweden past the finish line seems finalized, Kristen.
Yeah, it was just an extraordinary about-face by Turkey. The leadership there staunchly opposed until, of course, NATO Secretary General tweeted that out. Why is it critical for the summit to reach this deal now, Ali, and what else are you tracking that's on the agenda there?
Yeah, well, this really put the president and the United States sort of in an awkward position, because the United States and U.S. officials have said that they support Turkey's membership into the European Union, but they've also added that they really have nothing to do with the situation and the decision is not up to them. So this decision happening now really takes a load off of the president as he prepares to meet with Erdogan tomorrow and have these discussions, and it really takes this topic off of sort of his to-do list when he meets with Erdogan, because there are so many other things that the president wants to focus on during this NATO summit. We've talked about that focus.
Well, Turkey's leader definitely switched that up in reference to Joe Biden. Oh, hold on one second. He definitely switched that up in reference to what Joe Biden had planned to happen. So there's that.
Focus specifically on President Zelensky's campaign to have Ukraine become a member of NATO. Remember, he's hoping for at least the framework of a deal to come out of this summit. But we've heard the president, as you played in that soundbite there, saying Ukraine is not ready. Other leaders of NATO allies have said as long as Ukraine is at war with Russia, this should just be not on the table, at the risk of having Russian aggression towards those Western allied countries for supporting Ukraine. The big question.
But they weren't worried about any type of Russian aggression when Joe Biden just made the decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. They weren't worried about Russian aggression in reference to that. Now, all of a sudden, it's an issue of Russian aggression. These are just some of the odd dealings in this, I feel like.
The question now is, in lieu of that NATO membership, that agreement, what sort of security compromise or deal could be made to help Ukraine defend itself while this war is still in effect? So the president is trying to really do this delicate dance of rallying support among these NATO allies while we're seeing divisions already, not just on that NATO membership of Ukraine, but also on that controversial decision you mentioned there for these cluster munitions to be sent to Ukraine, Kristen.
Yeah, Allie, let me follow up with you.
So there's already division. There's already people who are against this that don't agree with it, even though this is what Turkey wants. And what happens if Joe Biden says, I'm sorry, but no, you cannot be a part of the EU? What happens if those other countries push back and say, sorry, Turkey, you cannot join the EU? Does that mean that Sweden still gets to join NATO? This is just going to be very, very interesting. I think this is Turkey trying to play ball here in a sense that, like, we're not going to do anything that you want in reference to NATO expansion unless you make us a part of the EU. In other words, they're asking for concessions. Imagine that.
On that point, because in a letter to the president, 19 progressive Democrats actually condemned the decision to send those cluster bombs to Ukraine. What is the White House saying about this backlash from some members within his own party?
Yeah, the president facing backlash, not just from these world leaders, these NATO allies, but also from members of his own party here in the United States. And while this pushback from these progressives, while it is rare, it wasn't all too surprising because we had seen these progressive members of Congress speak out against the use of these cluster munitions for months now. They had even tried to get the president to sign off on a ban within the U.S. military for using these cluster munitions. So the administration, the president is standing by this decision, defending this decision, saying really the alternative to not send these cluster munitions just wasn't an option, that these cluster munitions will help Ukraine stay in the fight while they still struggle during their counteroffensive, Kristen.
Remember what I said before when we discussed this the other day, that cluster ammunitions are considered to be a war crime. Jen Psaki, when she was press secretary, she stated that herself. So it seems to be okay when the U.S. government wants to participate in war crimes, but it's not okay when another country wants to participate in war crimes. So there's a lot of hypocrisy here when it comes to the U.S. government. And I think more people need to call that out. But there's something else that I want to mention as well when we talk about Turkey being a part of the EU. It's interesting because then I have to think about a country like Greece. You see, there is a conflict between Turkey and Greece. And yes, Greece is a part of the EU. So how is this going to work out? Here's a little short clip to explain to you this conflict here with Turkey and Greece. Now, it's a YouTube short, so bear with me. They don't really let you zoom in on these things, but here we go.
Are Greece and Turkey about to go to war? The two countries are NATO members, which would put the treaty organization in a massive commotion. But in recent days, Turkey's President Erdogan has gone so far as to threaten Athens with missile strikes. What's behind the current rise in hostilities? Erdogan is known for his bellicose rhetoric, and the two countries have a long-time territorial dispute. However,
so if he wants to threaten Greece with missile strikes, wouldn't it be a little awkward if he's also a part of the EU? Interesting.
The current hostilities started over military exercises in the Aegean Sea. Greece deployed soldiers and weapons on some islands near its coast, and Turkey claims this violates the island's non-military status. But Greece says it's following the law of the sea, and that Turkey has its own powerful military force not far from the islands. The two countries have come to the brink of war 3 times in the last 50 years, but now a new factor might be playing a role. Both countries have an interest in claiming drilling rights in the Mediterranean, hoping to hit energy gold. Right now, most people assume Erdogan is just making threats, but if things deteriorate, NATO might find itself in one of the trickiest situations in its history.
So notice they
Republican
mentioned
Senator Lindsey Graham just got.
Oops, sorry.
Are Greece and Turkey?
Notice that they mentioned drilling permits. So again, there's money involved. As usual, there is money involved. Now, let's take a look at these countries that are part of the EU, because what's really interesting to me, technically, well, I guess not even technically anymore, but even the UK is not a part of the EU. Let's take a look at the countries that are part of the European Union. Now, this is as of 2023. So take a look at this. So they're all the yellow countries right here, but they're listed here. Countries in the EU: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland. Second column: France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg. And third column: Malta, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. So where is Turkey going to fit in there? Really interesting. Really interesting. I don't know, man. We'll have to wait and see how this unfolds and if this actually happens. But I think it's going to be a little bit awkward for Turkey to be a part of the EU when they do have this conflict with Greece, which is also a part of the EU. So that should be interesting. Desert Manta says Turkey is hurt economically and Turkey wants US F-16s. There you go. Thank you so much for the super chat, C. Inwoke. Thank you so much. Resist says you can't fry a turkey without grease. Oh my God. You guys got jokes tonight. Well. Okay.